Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last panel session of our 2 days, very interesting, exciting 2 days on debating and talking about cybersecurity, organized by the East-West Institute here in Delhi. Since this is the last panel, we thought that maybe this is a panel that we, first of all, can have some reflections of what we heard and learned these 2 days. Of course, it's always useful at the end of any conference to think, have I learned something useful? I've spent a day or two. Is there one thing that very useful I'm taking with me? Were there any interesting contacts, people that I met, that I will remember for a long period of time, or maybe I'll start a partnership with them? And also, if we are lucky to have enough time, I'll be very happy that we can create a dialogue between you and the panel. And the panel is a very distinguished panel, people that have great experiences in several areas: politics, business, finance, communications, and so on and so forth. And I'm expecting that we can have a very interesting dialogue here. And let me just introduce, without any details, because as you know, you can get the details in the biography list, which is printed by the East-West Institute. Let me introduce the panel. And the panel on my left, of course, is Lady Latha Leddy, who is the Deputy National Security Advisor, Government of India, that represents the Indian government that supported this, I think, very important conference. Then we have Kamlesh Bajaj, who is the CEO of Data Security Council of India. Then Philip Venables, and Philip is the Chief Information Risk Officer from Goldman Sachs. And then Mike St. John Green, who is just recently has become former Deputy Director Officer of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance of United Kingdom, but had served in that post for several years and has a long experience of the sector. Then we have John Jack Howell, Executive Director for IEEE Communications Society. And of course, the last, but as usual, not the least, is General Radigi, who is Chairman, Deloitte Center for Cyber Innovation. And may I just start with Madam Reddy and ask her, what is, just to continue the dialogue, India and cybersecurity, cyberspace. India is an IT country. India is a multi-phase country. Huge histories, huge culture, many businesses, but India is seen by the world also as an IT country. So it's a birthplace of cyber threat and also the place that some of the cyber threats will be defeated. So it will be very interesting to hear your views on this subject.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Firstly, may I thank the East-West Institute for having organized this Cybersecurity Summit here in India. I had the privilege to attend the last summit in London and was very happy when Mr. John Rose informed us that the next summit was going to be held in India. As you rightly remarked, India has been an IT center for many years. And obviously, like all countries, in recent years, we've become very aware of the threats emanating from the cyber world or cyberspace and the need for a robust cybersecurity architecture, both nationally and internationally. I'd like to think that we were not the source of cyber threats, but it is true that cyber is a medium that knows no boundaries. The threats can come from any country. Attribution is difficult, which is one of the issues that we all have to grapple with when dealing with cybersecurity. But obviously, as countries get more connected, in fact, I wouldn't say India is the most connected country in the world electronically. Obviously, there are countries such as the United States, some European countries which are far more all-encompassing cybersecurity, cyber networks. But India is getting there. You know, more and more of our systems, particularly many of our critical infrastructures, now have a strong cyber or computer component in them, and therefore it becomes very important to look at this issue of cybersecurity. I do hope that we will be a source not just for solutions for cyber, but also of becoming a hub for cybersecurity services. And of course, given our very large population and the fact that we will have a large and young population for whom we are looking at capacity building and specialized job training, that we will be in a position to supply solutions and manpower to actually apply those solutions, not just to India, but to the world.
Well, thank you very much. Indeed, as you rightly said, we hope that India is not a source of cyber threat, but when you have a country with 700 people probably today and tomorrow having access to internet via their small handsets, mobile communication.
700 million.
Million, I'm sorry. 700 people having access. Among 700 people, you can find one or two young, sometimes innocent people that would like to challenge the system, because that's cyberspace is a space for young people. That's the space for the future. I think we are at the gateway to the future. But during this conference, we had a couple of very interesting initiatives, announcements, and about international cooperation. We heard about the possibility of China and India doing something together in this space. We heard about that India will do more with international cable systems. Would you like to reflect on India's place in international cooperation, both exchange of ideas and experiences, but also on basically real joint ventures or joint projects?
I think, India has been active, both in the multilateral as well as the regional area. Bilaterally, yes, we are talking to several countries and we propose to talk to several more. I wouldn't like to name all the countries, but yes, we do have dialogues with various countries. We have technical cooperations, obviously, between our cyber emergency response team, which is CERT, CERT India, and the CERT in other countries. But apart from that, we do speak about policy issues, what we should be doing in international fora with several of our partners. I think this is important because right now there are a lot of discussions going on in a lot of fora. As I mentioned, multilateral at the UN, at the WICT, at the Internet Governance Forum. There was the Budapest conference. And I think there'll be several more coming up next year as well. I've just mentioned the ones for this year. And obviously it's important that before any such major conference, countries that have common points of view and even countries that differ on certain points of view, it's important that we exchange views so that we go into that meeting knowing what to expect and having certain common positions, but certain issues on which we agree to disagree. I think that dialogue is always a good thing. And if you don't actually talk to each other, you can't really understand the other person's point of view or constraints. So I would encourage not just India, but all countries to reach out to each other in this effort.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And I would like to ask Mr. Bajaj, because he is the CEO of Data Security Council of India. I think India is, again, known worldwide as the country where the data is managed, in a sense that you have huge IT sector, which basically is serving your internal market. But two, maybe even 2.5, 3 times more you are serving through outsourcing of these businesses, the international data management. I think you do worldwide now this business. And the way the future of the data is going to be structured in the world through the cloud, through the international cooperation, through the links, this is a vast area of huge business and services and management, but it also is an area where the cyber threats can penetrate. So I think it will be interesting to hear your views and your experience specifically. How do you fight, let's say, cyber threats?
I think you rightly said that India is the hub of outsourcing. And today we are serving over 100 countries. Although America is our largest market in terms of 60-65% share. But the European countries, Middle East, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, all that area is also emerging as an area that we are beginning to serve. Latin America also. Mm-hmm. So I think we are uniquely placed in terms of understanding what are the compliance regulations, security requirements as per the regulations of those countries, the laws of those countries. Because in global data flows, our assurance to our clients is that we treat the compliance regulations as coming along with the data when they cross the borders. Mm-hmm. So we give them that assurance. So to that extent, I think any company that you look at in India, any of the major service providers, you'll be surprised when you go there, you will find it a veritable zoo of security practices. There are partitioned areas that this is serving Pfizer, USA, this is serving Lloyds Bank, UK, this is this, and this part means 5,000 people sitting there, 2,000 people working there. So we have imbibed the practices of those countries. And in fact, many of the clients have come back and told our companies that the kind of practices which they would like to see implemented in their own countries, they cannot do so as per their own laws. But then as service providers, we do that. So the point I'm trying to make is that we are exposed to the security requirements of those countries, and we have great expertise in that. So that kind of assurance we can provide. And what we have tried to do as Data Security Council of India is to reinforce those practices, develop a set of common practices for data security, and which also take care of the requirements of privacy protection as per the requirements of those countries. As you know, globalization and technology adoption, internet in particular, they have also spawned not only threats, but also the requirements of privacy protection. So the practices that we have grown take that into consideration. So our message is, and what we are working towards, is to promote these practices for cybersecurity, data security, and privacy protection.
Well, can I just try to speculate a little bit, maybe I think as an idea. Because of the structure and because of the way it is the IT services, outsourcing IT services in India are managed, and which is in reality a worldwide business based in India, and you have to be in communication and interaction with a lot of countries, a lot of companies. Can that mean that one can take your sector, which is IT, data management services, as a platform of international cooperation, and try to on this platform, to create some sort of a common rules and behavior or tools of fighting cyber crime? Can we take you as a sort of platform where we test some ideas?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting idea, I must say that.
Because we're speaking a lot about international cooperation, but you are unique in this.
Yes, and it's a question of trust. Everything revolves around trust. The entire cyberspace cooperation is to build trust and confidence. So we talk about building of confidence building measures. So this could be one of them and a starting point. Like I'll tell you, in the cloud breakthrough group, we looked at security issues, compliance issues, and we said, okay, we don't have individual countries working for creation of cloud security practices. Why should EU develop their own cloud security standards and US and India and other countries? Let's develop common standards for cloud security and have common mechanism for certification of all those cloud service providers. And legal issues, we have said, okay, these are very complicated, let us park them for now. Now, it is the legal issues which need to be tackled, jurisdictional issues which need to be tackled, of how we will handle crimes, for example. How will a cloud provider part with the data or give it to the law enforcement of a country whose citizen has been violated in a country C by a person sitting in country B? So these legal jurisdictional issues have to be Technical, I don't see much of a problem at all. So we can experiment with the platform that you're proposing. We have no issues with that.
So maybe the East-West Institute can think about
Yes.
using this idea, if it's workable, then, and consider this is the birthplace of this idea, and maybe we can try
Certainly.
to do something together. In your remarks you said, and this is not the first time during these 2 days, we hear one after the other in different workshops, in different presentations, the word trust. And this is, it's an important, I think, important word for cybersecurity. And Michael, I would like to come to you. You have long experience working, and I think working in that area with other partners inside UK or outside UK, I'm sure that the word trust comes all the time.
Armin, thank you. Yes, it does indeed. I, in fact, was going to make this point about trust as a central element of my comments. But before I do, I do have to say thank you very much to EWI, and what a pleasure it is to come to India. I personally have never been to India, and it's been a delightful experience. I also very much like the think and do tank concept, the idea of these breakthrough groups. I've very much enjoyed seeing the energy and the engagement from the audience in those groups. I've particularly enjoyed standing up in front and being a champion as well. So thank you for that. Yes. And I think echoing what Madam Reddy said, and this starts us into the trust point, I think that discussions between groups with differing views are absolutely essential. And these informal debates in sessions like this help inform the more formal discussions that will inevitably take place. But it's only through these types of informal debates that we really understand each other's aspirations, fears, concerns, and issues. And I think that we're now bridging the gap between what is essentially has been a technical discussion so far and moving into the policy space. I am an engineer, but I have spent a lot of time, as Armin said, in the last few years operating in that policy space. I'm delighted to see that discussion becoming mainstream. I think over the past few days, 2 days of the conference, but I'll include the third day at FICI, where there were some very useful preliminary discussions. There are some points that have emerged which I'd like to just to touch on. So the word trust. I think it's in our collective interest that we all trust and have confidence in this environment, this technical man-made environment of cyberspace. And we're here to talk about security, but security is not a goal in itself. Security leads to trust, and trust, of course, is only an end to us enjoying the benefits of the economic and social facilities offered by cyberspace. And I think it's important that all of us, as we talk about security mechanisms, keep in mind the end goal. Why are we actually doing this? I enjoyed the supply chain discussion particularly, and I would just like to share some thoughts on that. Kamlesh, a moment ago, you drew out the point in terms of cloud about this being a legal issue, and I put supply chain and cloud actually in a similar space here. I think, though, the engineers still have a role, and for the engineers in the audience, I would say that I think we can do better at our systems engineering. I think the vendor does have to provide evidence to generate the trust in the supply chain, and we could do better at, in some cases, the best practice in build procedures, transparent configuration control, requirements traceability. Some of these things would actually help support that trust. But more broadly, what we do, we're not looking for sudden, simple, single solutions. This has got to be incremental. I think we've got to avoid the seduction of that pursuit of the single but rather unattainable solution. So we need to build on existing legislation, existing regulation where necessary, recognizing the regional differences. Again, I've heard this debate come out in a number of sessions recently. And I think the cyber environment is developing very rapidly, so that speaks also also to the need for being incremental. And that'll leave us with, I hope, an environment that we can continue to enjoy the innovation, the creativity that we've seen so far. So I'll stop there, if I may, but trust is absolutely at the heart of it.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. But you also mentioned here something important, that at the end of the day, we have to be practical. The issues related to cybersecurity are connected to real physical objects, which are the infrastructure, data, storages, people, communication devices, and all of that stuff. And a lot of them was created not yesterday, but probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Some of them are not even digital. So while speaking about cyber solutions or cybersecurity solutions, we cannot adopt this idea that the history starts yesterday when I bought i5. History started probably when the radio was discovered, or even before that. So I think, how do you sort of integrate the new and the old in one?
I'm going to answer a slightly different question, if I may, by observing that the cycle of technology is so quick here that actually it won't take long before what we do now feeds into the new environment. I'm not saying that we don't need to do anything about the legacy at all, but the sooner we start to address some of these matters, the sooner it will feed in, and it will actually have an impact quite readily. But I agree with you that what we do in terms of our new systems needs to be complemented by a number of practical measures about how to deal with the malicious activity that is taking place against our existing infrastructure. And there, I think there are some measures such as sharing of metrics so that we can actually measure the impact of what is going on at the moment and compare and contrast different remedial steps so that we know where we should be investing. Because I put it to us, it's not always obvious to us what we should be doing, what is proportionate, how much is enough in terms of security in addressing the point that you described. So I think there's something about measurement that is needed.
Well, thank you. Can I come back to India? Because India is vast, but also it's a country that is developing very fast. And if I compare, let's say, India with the country that I was born, Soviet Union, that country, when I look at it, former Soviet republics, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, my own Armenia, we have a legacy, and it's huge, for example. There's a huge electricity network all over Soviet Union. Every village has an electricity. But the systems that bring this electricity or telephone are a legacy, it's history. So to build up new technologies, in those countries you have to integrate the old and to bring the new. While in some places in India, from what I hear from colleagues here, people don't have electricity, but now they have the mobile phone and the connectivity to, so it is a phase transition, so bypassing something, a phase, going to the next phase. So how do you feel in India on this?
And you know, in certain places, people have to travel 8 to 10 kilometers to go and charge their mobiles because electricity is not available where they're located.
So it's a unique place, India, from that perspective. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I was going to say that we like to use the term that we leapfrogged in technology, because in a sense, you know, our whole industrial revolution has been compressed into 60 years. What other countries took 100, 200, 250 years to do. We started off with almost no industry when we turned independent in 1947, except for a textile industry which had actually been driven into the ground by the introduction of a lot of imported textiles. So we really had to start from scratch, and considering that, and particularly with the IT technology, cyber technology, whatever you want to call it, you know, we did leapfrog. And now with telephony becoming so important, mobile telephones becoming, but the majority of those people would use it for simple communication, maybe not for the smart services, not for the email and simple SMS and telephone. That is very, very popular at the moment, even in rural areas, even as Kamlesh says, if they have to travel to go and charge their phones. And you know, in the old days, there used to be what we used to call a PCO box, a public call office. and people would be given a license and a land telephone line so that they could act as the connectivity hotline for the whole village, and people would go there and pay to use that phone. Now even those are being run by people with mobile phones in very small villages. And it's really quite amazing, the transformation which I personally have seen in the last few years, where everyone, regardless of their station in life, and even if they're lacking some other basic amenities, will have a mobile phone. This has become a real takeover by technology of the majority of the population.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and thank you for this comment. I think I would like to come to what you said now a bit later, because it's not only connected to India. I think this is probably a global. I think we are entering a new era, and this is one of the features of this new era. At the end of the day, if the history was developing in a sort of very continuous way, we could look back and say, okay, those nations who didn't succeed during the industrial development, they are back from those who are very active. So they don't have much chance to basically come and overcome economically. But the reality is, the new era, the new 21st century, allows people to do the leapfrog. I mean, bypassing some past of the history, and if you were economically not developed, let's say 50, not you, I mean, any country, small country, and this gives a chance to any big and small country to rewrite their current history. If you missed something 50 or 100 years ago, now you have a chance to catch up and be in the forward. But I'd like to come to that issue a bit later. But this conference was not, as Ross said, about silver bullets. It was more about policies and politics. But at the end of the day, the silver bullets matter. And at the end of the day, we can have all of these nice discussions, but then some of us have to go back and face the threat and provide solutions and protect their companies or their institution or their department or the country. And one of those is Philip, and I would like to ask Philip to share with us how do you see issues that we're debating here from, with an eyes of someone that cybersecurity is your daily life?
Yeah, so I think we have some cause to be positive, not least because there are many more summits like this occurring around the world. I think sometimes, though, it tends, in gatherings like this, we tend to keep calling upon action upon ourselves to do more, which I think is absolutely right, because there is still a lot more to do. But it's probably worthwhile pausing and reflecting on some successes that have happened over the past number of years, because at least that keeps us motivated to keep going with the future challenges. And I think, we can probably take some comfort in the fact that, some of the challenges we talk about that we're going to meet are already being addressed. When we, a few people have mentioned some of the skills challenges, but yet all around the world we see universities mobilizing graduate degree programs, diplomas, embedding cybersecurity in existing educational programs. We see in many countries, I can only really speak from a US perspective, so-called cyber challenge programs that, so there's some things we're doing in the US as part of the US cyber challenge driven by Homeland Security and the Center for Internet Security and some other organizations where, from high schools through universities, through postgraduate programs, running cyber challenges and having capture the flag competitions to find and develop talent that otherwise wouldn't be found, to channel into cybersecurity activities. We're finding fertile ground in something, a number of firms have established veterans intern programs, training people with intelligence analysis skills but not been applied to cyber, to cross over to cyber. We see a lot of, we talk about, in some senses, we talk sometimes about the absence of standards, and yet I actually find the opposite. I think there's a lot of actual good standards, the SANS top 20 controls, the Australian DSD top 35. There's a variety of other standards that all boil down to the same things, that many types of attacks, not necessarily the most advanced attacks, but many attacks can be defended by just solid discipline. Now, in some cases, that discipline may be unpalatable to some organizations and some people because it requires discipline. Patching systems, taking away administrative rights, controlling the use of portable media, ensuring software is developed with appropriate controls and security. These things are about, there's no, well, I think, to the point about silver bullets, I think, silver bullet being something magical, I think there's no silver bullets. But there's plenty of bullets and there's plenty of effective bullets. And I think, when you look at those foundations of core controls, configuration, identity management, the things that a lot of organizations have demonstrated as being effective, and I think you can take some comfort. And then the final thing I would say, though, is more to the more advanced attacks for which some of the basic foundational controls may be less effective over time. I think there's a lot of work underway that we should probably double down on around building so-called more defensible architectures. I think everything from virtualization to cloud technologies to a number of other more advanced and developing technologies coming out of various R&D environments are showing that we can build technologies that are inherently more defensible than the past generation. And I think just making sure that those defensible architectures, moving target defenses, more dynamic response and more dynamic defense, and more dynamic use of intelligence to drive preemptive defense is going to be something that positions us significantly in the future. So, I think there's more to be done, but I'm probably kind of guardedly optimistic, especially given the summits like this that we've been very proud to sponsor over the years.
Michael?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Phil, I agree with almost everything there. Yeah, you might want to. I agree with almost everything you said there, and I certainly agree that if only we all did what we really know we should be doing, and I'm talking about basic hygiene, the sort of things that Phil was outlining, we'd be in a much better place. The sort of basic configuration management approaches. And I certainly agree that we can then zone in on the more difficult matters, and I think that they are made more difficult if we get our basic hygiene right in the first place. But the bit where I would just take issue is, you said there are plenty of standards, and that's a good thing. I actually think plenty of standards is confusing the world at the moment, and I think what we've got is too many. Sorry, yes. Jack Howell from IEEE may not wish to hear this. I think we've got too many standards. We've got a cacophony of conflicting standards, and that is not helping the environment. So I think this is an issue that needs to be taken away, perhaps not by this forum, but some of the professional bodies.
Yeah, like I wouldn't dispute that. I mean, I think it would be nice to have a more unified and self-consistent set of standards. And so I agree. The only thing I would be guarded on is, as the cliche goes, the best can be the enemy of the good. And I think, if somebody wants to, one of the things I see in sometimes the goal to have one best unified standard is people ignore all the existing stuff and then write another new best standard, which actually just is additive to the existing set of standards. And I think, again, through EWI and through various other international organizations, I think there is more of a move to consolidate practices, to have a common code of practice for many things. And I think that should be welcomed and encouraged, but I think as long as we don't let the best be the enemy of the good, I think we'll be fine.
Well, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Michael. I think since we have a small debate here, we better try to find an arbiter. And maybe better than you, Jack, there's nobody here.
I suppose I should start with an apology. After all, it was about 50 years ago that Vince Cerf and Bob Kahn opened the box with the Internet Protocol, published in one of our journals, and that box was just cracked. It's amazing that it's been 50 years since they wrote that paper. And then it would have never blossomed if the government had kept their hands on it. The Defense Research Projects Agency kept it, and then they said, what are we going to do with it? So they gave it away. Then all around the world, other people have been working on it. It blossomed, became a source of great revenue and great concern. As for standards, many standards, and I shouldn't be quoted on this, are defensive rather than creative. You do the standards so that your company, your economic concern is not secondary to somebody else's concern. So that's, you have and of course the standards organizations derive some income from maintaining the standards. But anyway, I want to back up and thank the chairman for inviting me, and also give credit to John Morose and Carl Rauscher. It was John who had the wisdom to get Carl to become the chief technical officer for EWI. I don't know how you existed before, and the best thing I can say about John, or excuse me, about Carl is he's one of the most overcommitted engineers that I know, and that's very frustrating for engineers because they have the compulsion for closure, and I think every time he closes one little, something else opens up. The real reason I'm here, though, is to facilitate the visibility of engineers that indeed we still have the foundries where bullets are made, and again, they may not be silver, but they are still part and parcel to the process. I like the agreements, standards, policies, regulation, the ASPAR summary, because we're in all parts of that, and should be. The other thing that occurred to me when I was recorder or editor for one of the sessions this morning was the dimensions of cybersecurity and so forth. And my background included being a planetarium director at Air Force Academy, and one of the things that I quoted from was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. And it starts out with Van Briesbach, I think, saying, first of all, you must understand, in a British accent, of course, space is big, really big. And I think cybersecurity is the first realization that's encompassing everybody. And now that we're on this train, I don't think it's possible to get off. Individual decisions can get off the grid or do this or do that, but it's becoming so integrated into everybody's life and involving every individual that I just don't think that escape or return is possible, which is kind of scary anyway.
Thank you, Jacob. I have a question. You represent two questions, in fact. You are representing one of the biggest, or maybe the biggest, professional organization in the world. And that organization, when looks around, sees a lot of challenges. But as we are getting further and further into 21st century, cyber threats, cyberspace is becoming one of the most, or the most important one. I think, how do you see how do you see your organization being supportive or helping the international community to do this phase transition from the old world to the new world of the cyber world?
Well,
and the second question,
okay,
maybe you'll just answer them, is related to we were speaking, Philip, here about silver bullets. Our next conference, the fourth one, is going to be in Silicon Valley. And I have the feeling, while we can continue on the fourth one, speaking about policies, about solutions, about psychology, about philosophy, about politics of that. But in the meantime, it will be not a bad idea, next door somewhere, since we're in the Silicon Valley, have pilots or simulations or some demonstration of the real bullets. I mean, technologically advanced solutions, and maybe even inviting a couple of hackers to show what they can do. I think to have the real feeling of what is cyber threat and the cyber solution.
I think that's a great idea. In fact, it would be, I think, further the visibility of EWI considerably and make all the policymakers happy that the confusion and the unsolvable of the policy situation can possibly be aided and abetted by more technology and demonstrations. And again, there's a whole library full of tools that can be applied to threat situations. And so I think it would be a very locally appealing topic, and you could get some of the competing, well, I'm sure some imaginative competition would stimulate a lot of
Nothing
interest.
wrong with that?
No, nothing at all.
And what about IEEE?
Well, IEEE is, we have 40,000 of the 400,000 members of IEEE belong to the Communications Society, but communications is a part of virtually all the technical societies. Everybody's got communications somewhere in there. We have over 50 conferences that we run and a number of publications. And when you put out a call for papers, anyone can respond. They're all peer reviewed and typically by people with expertise in your area. So that provides an opportunity for gathering different viewpoints on a same subject. So I think IEEE would be very pleased to take a more visible role. We can be blamed for starting it. Maybe we can be credited for helping solve it.
But you're already blamed to start the World Wide Web, so.
Yes, that's true.
The internet, so
Yeah.
you can take the second and the third one.
Yes, well, Thomas Edison really started it. He was one of our first members.
See? So, well, thank you, Jack. General.
Sir.
That takes me back a part of my life. You are one of the most youngest generals that I've met in my life. Young by spirit, young by ability of learning, asking, absorbing, and also accepting new ideas. I wish you could work, when I was in office, you could work with me as well. But I would like to have a continuation of the discussion that we had together about the 21st century that we started earlier. Because here at the summit, several workshops had the discussion, is this new? Are the rules new, or they are partially new, or is the old story but just wrapped in a different way? And I have a very radical opinion here, that I think we are entering a new era, 21st century. And it's not only because we are one small village, which is called globe, which is now interconnected, interrelated, interdependent, interactive, all of that. And we're so much interconnected to each other, and we don't think about it daily, but it's a part of our life. But also we are technologically, in other technologies, so advanced that we will leapfrog not only in internet or communications, but also in energy. Tomorrow we'll produce energy without burning oil, from sun, from wind, from biotechnologies. We will produce things, integrated way from worldwide. So I see the world is going to be sort of post-industrial, that as we spoke, opens opportunities for everybody, every nation. So I would like to ask you to share, how do you see, because you are working now with one of the world leaders in a specific sector, and one of your roles is also to predict and to look at the future. So how do you see in 10, 15, 20 years' time the cyberspace communications? Let's think where it will take us and what will be the solutions and the threats.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I guess the reason I'm here is because I was asked to sort of represent the EWI as a stakeholder. And so I'm putting on my EWI hat. Many of you may not know, but when I was introduced to John Morose a number of years ago, we started talking about this phenomena that was changing the world of cyber and cyberspace. And we could see some emerging issues with cybersecurity. And so lo and behold, we started talking about the world and how it's changing with this phenomena called cyber that actually is pulling all of us together when you think about it. I was on an airplane not too long ago, and I decided to take my cocktail napkin, which only had a Diet Coke when I had sitting on it. So my mind was still sharp, and I was thinking about how many cyber derivative words, have started now to fill our media and our minds and the way our world is going today. And I came up with 29 terms on one side of my napkin. And it's those things that we're seeing in the newspaper every day, from cyberspace to cybersecurity to cyber war, cyber attack, cyber terrorism, all of these types of things. So cyber really is the phenomena that is changing our world, and it's why it's bringing this whole gathering of individuals together. And so as I talked with John Morose, and we decided that probably a good activity for the East-West Institute to get involved with would be the Worldwide Cybersecurity Initiative, because there seemed to be a lot of things that we could talk about on a global stage. And you mentioned the industrial age. As I think about the industrial age and what that meant to the world, and then we went into what many refer to as the information age, and I think a lot of people are still thinking that we are in the information age. But as I think about that, I think we've got it. You know, we're all buried in information today because we've opened up this new internet world, and it comes with tremendous opportunity, but also tremendous vulnerabilities and threats to us. But we've got the information. As a matter of fact, I tell people, you know, take the cell phone to dinner, because as we have interesting conversations over dinner, no question today needs to be unanswered, because you just tap it in and you've got the answer immediately at your fingertips. So we've got it. I mean, we've got the information. I think the age that we are now into, and I become more and more convinced of this as I hear discussions among groups like this, I think we're entering an age of interdependence. More and more nations of the world are becoming dependent on each other, with economies, with security, with opportunities. And so an industrial age, I think, has moved into an information age, and now we're going into an interdependence age. And so this area of cyber can do an awful lot about the interdependence that we're going to be seeing in the future. What we have realized, though, is that not one country and not one company can solve the issues of cybersecurity. Now, there may have been a time in the past when one nation would have thought, we can solve this ourselves. We can do it ourselves. You know, we're autonomous enough, we're powerful enough, we can do it. I don't think there's any nation on the earth today that thinks they can solve this issue of cybersecurity by themselves and in a governmental body, or even if it's multinational, but it's got to be a government and industry type opportunity. What makes me, as an EWI stakeholder, so proud of what has happened over the last 3 years is the fact that in Dallas, we took on 6 different actions, and those grew into 6 breakthrough groups and activities. And then in London, we added 5 more. And here in India, because we talked to the Indians beforehand about what was important to them as they saw the emerging need of cybersecurity, were 3 new topic areas which we have been addressing during this summit. So it makes me proud of the fact that we're taking on the big issues of this, which continue to change and which continue to evolve, and even new ones come to us as far as things that need to be discussed, and that our breakthrough groups are actually addressing those issues not just once a year together, but throughout the year. And that's the reason why we wanted to have breakthrough groups. It was something different as opposed to just a working group. We wanted to create a new, kind of like new terminology, so that it indicated that we would work throughout the year on these topics. Now, of those 11 or 12 or 13 topics that have emerged over the last 3 summits, I wanted to concentrate just on one to give examples of the kinds of things that are happening. We talk about EWI being a think and do tank, or a think tank and a do organization. And the reason I have worked so much on the Priority International Communications Breakthrough Group is because of experiences that I've had. And let me just name 4 of them that have really made me so passionate about working on priority international communications. The first one I thought of, and there's numerous ones from my military background and even my post-military background, was Hurricane Andrew when it hit Florida in the United States in 1992. We had an Air Force base there that we had hurricane-proof shelters for the aircraft. Well, that hurricane hit, and most of the base population had been evacuated. However, the base commander, who was a good friend of mine, and a number of his individuals, his communications officer, went inside the hangar that was supposed to be and was built to be hurricane-proof, and the doors blew down on it. You know, it wasn't strong enough. And so, surprise, and lots of aircraft were ruined by that. The second event that I thought about, which has shaped my feelings about priority international communications, was I was given the opportunity of representing the Department of Defense on the 1st of January of 2000, Y2K. And so I had the opportunity of doing some press conferences from the blast doors of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs. And at that time, we had some worries for a number of months and years about the potential for misunderstandings of computers, where we might think that a couple nations of the world were launching missiles at each other, nuclear missiles. So the United States, and with Moscow, created 7 different means and media of ways of having interconnected communications, so that if there wouldn't be any misconception or misunderstanding about anything we saw or that might have been falsely generated on a radar screen, so that we wouldn't have some exchange that was not true. So that was another one of those ones where I saw the importance of priority international communications. The next one was 9/11. And for us, the terrorist attacks and having New York City isolated with communications not being able to go in or out, basically from 9 in the morning until 6 p.m. at night. Priority communications that the United States had invested in earlier, called Government Emergency Telecommunications Service, GETS, actually worked. And it was one of the only things that worked to put priority communications through. And then the fourth one is really personal. My daughter was getting married in 2005, and she decided to have a destination marriage or wedding in Cancun, Mexico. And it was supposed to be the 22nd of October of 2005, but we got hit by a Category 5 hurricane called Wilma. And we went into a hurricane-proof facility, which was caving in on us as we were beat up by a Cat 5 hurricane. And when we finally emerged after after several days to the devastation that was outside, you find out how vulnerable you are when no ATM machine worked to get cash. You couldn't call out. The aircraft couldn't come in to rescue people because basically you were basically isolated. And so priority communications was very important, and it was international. I remember the Greeks and the Germans all got their aircraft in to rescue their people, and guess who were the last people that were able to be, what nationality was the last to get picked up? It was the Americans. And it's because of our strict regulations about you got to have a radar, certain radar coverage, and that had it all blown away. So I'm a person that has lived through a lot of needs for priority international communications, and I'm a deep believer in it. The breakthrough groups have actually put together some documents, and I hold this one up because it's priority international communications, and I'm proud of this document. There's a number of other documents that our breakthrough groups have produced. You should read them if you're interested in these areas, if you haven't had a chance. John Morose and I had an opportunity to go to the United States Congress and actually take several of our breakthrough group documents with us. And our congressional leaders were impressed by these documents because they could take them with them and read them. So I guess what I'm saying is we are a think and do organization with EWI. It's not just talk, it's just not philosophical discussions, but also when you feel pretty sure of yourself, sure enough, in fact, to put things in writing, you can produce documents like this that are very useful to the world and can also help to generate the track 1.5 or track 1 type dialogue. And in this particular Priority International Communications, we have 4 specific recommendations there. So as Puneet Renjan was saying earlier, and we've had discussions, you know, we're actually putting some markers down and saying, this is what we need to do, and then we measure our progress. And this is very important, I think, for our future.
Well, thank you very much, Ari. I think you did a nice part of sharing with us your views about the future, but also once more time as a board member of East West Institute, representing the board very strongly here at this audience. Michael, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Armin. Only if there's time. I was actually going to return to the vision of the future, but if that topic's moved on.
Yeah, but short and sharp.
I will be short and sharp. So General Harriet was describing where we might be in 10 or so years, 20 years' time. And what struck me by that description was that we are living more closely together, if not physically, then certainly virtually. But as we do so, we've got to learn what that means in terms of our natural cultural differences. And I think that a lot of what we're talking about in terms of what's acceptable, what is not acceptable, is actually in part rooted in the way we naturally behave. And so as this internet, as the cyberspace brings us closer together, I think we're going to have to learn more about and learn how to respect the cultural differences between us.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have also to respect our audience and not create a barrier between us and the audience, and sometimes vice versa. With this, probably we have a couple of minutes. And I would like to open the space of communication to the audience. And if you have comments, remarks, or questions, please don't be shy. And we're all ears and would like to hear your questions. Yeah. Please, can we have microphones?
I'm Gargi Kini. I just wanted to make a comment on the measurement part of it. Last week, myself and another of my colleague, he was from the Data Security Council of India, Rahul, both of us were in a meeting at Rome on the IT security techniques of the Joint Technical Committee of ISO. And they had a working group on economics of cybersecurity, which I think is going to have an overlap on what we are going to do here. So maybe we need to also collaborate on that forum also. That's what I just wanted to provide that information. It's just last week. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll just say one other thing. I think that's a really good comment because it's been interesting in the past few years. Well, you know, I'm a great believer in this being, as much as anything, an engineering discipline because we have to create solutions for things. There are a number of crossover disciplines, and it's been interesting to watch a number of universities start up research programs around the economics of information security and data protection, especially the behavioral economics and incentives, I think is extremely useful. I think there's another parallel branch of research we're seeing around the psychology of information security, as well as human-computer interaction and user interface design and system design to promote the effective use. So I think more and more, I think there's valuable seams in between different research disciplines, and that's an excellent one.
Luis Kuhn, National Defense University. 14 years ago, during the Clinton-Gore administration, the National Institute of Science and Technology, NIST, came with the concept of the digital divide. At that time, there was a concept that if the world could be represented by 100 people, 50 of them do not have what we call a house. 80 did not eat 3 meals a day. One of the 100 had a university degree, but about 70 of them would not know how to read or write. So there was a big concern about what the general was talking about, the information age, and this polarization between the haves and the have-nots of information. Well, if now we move the clock forward, there is something that probably was completely unexpected, and it's the number of people that today, although they might not know how to read or write, have a cell phone, which is kind of like a very different type of cybersecurity, if you want to call it that way, because they are participants, and perhaps this opens opportunities to bridge that, that gap. And I wondered from your perspective, because after all, here you're going to have a lot of good people and some not so good people. What opportunities this technology may offer that could be good for society?
Well, thank you. Yes.
I think one issue which we've really seen enormous progress in is in the area of e-governance, and simply because so many people are now connected. For example, there is a scheme where the government is thinking that through mobile telephones, people would then have access to information. Let me give an example. In a village, normally people would not know what is the price at which they should sell their agricultural produce. So they would then be, in the old situation, completely at the mercy of a middleman who would come, buy cheap from them, and sell expensive in the market. Today, they have a possibility through the mobile phone and through the small handheld devices, which some of them, as you rightly say, while they may not be fully literate in the normal educational sense, have learned how to handle these devices. And in the local language, they're able to look up. I remember someone showing me a program some years ago already where they would have pictures of the vegetables so that the people could identify these vegetables, and they learned to at least read the numbers. So then they would argue with the middlemen when they came and make sure that they got a fair price. This is a very simple but telling example of how technology can benefit really the weakest sections of society.
Thank you. Eric?
I'd like to follow on with that, because we are so privileged to be in this wonderful nation of India. And I know over the years that I have spoken with India's people, and if I say anything wrong, please correct me. But you know, with a population of 1.2 billion, I know and the age, and I think we heard some amazing statistics about the youth, 25 years and younger. And I think there's other nations of the world exactly that fit into this mold of how do you educate, you know, that kind of a growing population and reach out to those areas. And I think one of the most interesting areas that I've heard, and you mentioned it, is the cheap tablet or the cell phone. That my comment earlier, you know, you don't need to go to dinner anymore and have any question unanswered, you know, that frustrates you and you can't get to bed, you know, you can't get to sleep later on. So I think putting these kind of devices into youth's hands and building new thought processes toward educating a population is a powerful suggestion, because there may not be enough brick, mortar, and money to build schools in the traditional fashion of what we have known in the past. And in other nations of the world, there's more and more students that are not dependent as much going to the school, you know, but there's a lot of homeschooling now that is going on. There's a movement more, in many cases, back to the family and to the family. So I think this is the educational opportunities of the future, and what cyberspace is going to bring. There's tremendous potential if, in fact, we use it properly, and with various nations of the world.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. I think you are right here. That's just, yeah. I think you're right here, because at the end of the day, this conference is about how to protect a vital space, a new space of our existence, which is the cyberspace, how to make it a place where we can develop, educate, grow, and look into the future. So that's why cybersecurity is important, to protect that space, so that will be the space of peace and development. Please?
Thank you very much. My question's for Ms. Reddy, actually. First of all, may I say how absolutely proud I am for you representing the women gender on that stage there. It makes me absolutely delighted to see more and more women in security in India. So thank you very much. Secondly, I think we've had a lot of discussion on public-private partnerships over the last 2 days, and that sort of emerged as a key theme of the stakeholder discussion that you've had as well. And I just wanted to sort of bring out this issue of intelligence sharing, something that we've seen as quite a critical issue that's emerged in the private sector. We have some fantastic non-profit organizations like the DSCI, NASCOM, FICCI, CII, doing a great job of acting as a conduit between the government and the private sector. But are we going to see, and this is obviously in your capacity as the Deputy National Security Advisor, are we going to see any sort of shift, as we've seen in other nations across the world, between more active intelligence sharing and more active sort of bonds between the government and the private sector? So this is something I'm especially interested in as an intelligence analyst working for the private sector. So your thoughts on that?
With the greatest of pleasure, because you've given me a chance to talk about my favorite topic, which is the need for partnership between the government and the private sector. You'll be happy to know that in July this year, the National Security Council Secretariat was tasked to work together with government departments and with the private sector, and to set up a joint working group to look at how we could work together. And very recently, on October 15th, we released the joint working group report on how private sector and government can work together on cybersecurity in India. It's available on www.pib.in, nic.in. The entire text of the report is available there. What we've agreed to do is to set up a permanent joint working group to monitor how we're going to actually implement the 4 pilot projects which we've identified, which include, firstly, setting up a test lab, which will be jointly run by private sector and government. Secondly, doing an audit of a particular sector to see how well it's, or otherwise it's protected or not. Thirdly, looking at a critical information infrastructure together. And fourthly, setting up a center of excellence. We were very lucky in getting fabulous cooperation, I would say, from the private sector associations. I would like to particularly acknowledge the contribution of Dr. Kamlesh Bajaj and DSCI, but also of NASCOM, of FICCI, of CII, the Telecom Operators Association, and the Manufacturers Associations as well, which were in touch with us. And it was quite surprising how many things we had in common in terms of what we wanted to do and what we felt the government should be doing, what the private sector should be doing. We also agreed to discuss international cooperation and advocacy in advance of major international meetings, so that the voices of the private sector were also taken into account while formulating government policy. But as I say, the easy part was putting together the report. The hard part is going to be implementing it. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. But thank you, and yes, we do look forward to having the cooperation of people like yourself in implementing that report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just one word, implementation. Implementation will be a lot easier if people recognize or go into it with the interdependency mindset versus the dependency mindset.
Well, thank you very much indeed. May I just, like General Radigi, put on my East-West Institute board member and vice chairman's hat and thank Government of India and all its departments that have supported this wonderful conference here in Delhi for the hard work and cooperation that your government and specific individuals have done for the success of this conference. Also thank Also, I take this opportunity to thank all of the sponsors of this conference, which include international companies, include Indian companies, include individuals who have sponsored and supported this conference, not only by financial means, but also participation and active participation. I would like to thank participants, because this conference without participants would never happen. We'll just have a nice dialogue together and go home. This conference was for the participants, and I mean the word participant is the right one, not the audience, but participants, because you were very, very active in the groups. You were very active both absorbing and also reacting and interconnecting and interacting. And special thanks to all of you. And of course, it goes to special thanks to East-West Institute, executive part of it, starting with John. John, you and your team, Carl, the whole team, thank you very much what you have done to make this conference a big success. And I would like to finish our presentation of this panel, because cybersecurity is an issue for East-West Institute. It's not accidental, it's not incidental, it's going to be continuing. We're looking forward for the 4th conference, which is going to be in the United States in Silicon Valley. And I would like to ask you, in one sentence or two, what is that you would like us, a wish or a question related to the 4th cybersecurity conference? Just a simple word or a wish, what you'd like to see in Silicon Valley in a year's time. This is not prepared question, and I want your just incident, maybe emotional answer. So, Michael, you can start, because it looks like you have something to say.
No, that was the side element of me thinking. But I do think that it would be good if we could involve some of the senior policymakers as well as business leaders in recognizing the need to address some of the threats that we are exposed to here and to manage those risks. So to bring in some of the senior policymakers as well as the people who really understand the subject.
Well, thank you very much. Philip?
Yeah, this may appear somewhat self-serving, but I promise it isn't. We'd certainly be happy to, we have a very large investment banking practice in Silicon Valley, and one of, along with our venture capital partners, one of the things that we're focusing a lot is allocating the right type of investments for the most optimal things, and certainly I think aligning policy with a view of risk, with a view of allocation of investment to generate the right future solutions, I think is going to be an important thing to get done especially in Silicon Valley.
Thank you. Kamlesh?
I think I'd like to see a culmination of both cloud and supply chain in terms of emerging with some kind of standards, as well as jurisdictional issues being resolved. So by the end of next year, if we can actually announce some of those, that'll be a great help, and will be a way forward in international community making use of the cyberspace more effectively.
Well, thank you. Harry?
You know, when I think about these summits, quite often you think, well, a larger population is better, of attendees. And then we've had discussions about, well, it's not the size of a summit or a conference, it's perhaps maybe having a smaller group that can work issues more closely and intimately. When I think about Silicon Valley and the possibilities there, I see that we need to have the right participants, but that may be a very large population. And I would just suggest to anyone out in the audience, if you have suggestions for East-West Institute to consider on who should be there, because we had an early morning session today and we had some people that commented on breakthrough groups, and they gave us some suggestions on who they didn't see here, and so I thought that's great. So if any of you have suggestions on vendors or activities that should be there, give us those suggestions, because we can send personal invitations. And also if you have any ideas about the kind of subject that should be there. And finally, I would just say that I hope we get to see the Indian population. It's a long way to travel, very long way to travel, but I have been so encouraged by the Indian participation, Armin, that you mentioned here, that I would love to see that continuance of passion, energy, and great ideas continue in California.
Silicon Valley. Jack?
One thing that always helps sell an idea is a demonstration, and if we're trying to market trust, some demonstrations of some trust-building mechanism, decision processes, I think would be quite attractive, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of individuals or companies willing to, more than eager to do that.
Thank you. Ready?
I'd like to respond to the invitation from General to say that though Silicon Valley is a long way away, it's a very popular destination for India. As you all know, there are a large number of Indians who are already there. But apart from that, I think many people from India would be most interested in attending, I'm sure. And I think that we would certainly urge people both from government and from the private sector to attend the next summit. I also wanted to add one thing which I think is important, and if you could have a section, a separate group on this, I think apart from the government groups themselves talking about, or government representatives talking about what we should be doing in terms of international agreements, fora, and so on, it would be interesting to have a session where you heard voices from the audience speaking in more concrete terms about the specific negotiations that may be ongoing at that time. I may have missed a session here where that happened, but...
so you'll not miss the one in San Francisco?
I won't miss the one in San Francisco, but I think it is important. We did have an off-the-record meeting of government representatives here. That was useful, but I think it would be very useful for all of us to sit on a platform and hear what's coming from both you know, perhaps the local business community as well as international business community that's attending.
Well, thank you very much. Now, since we have established a bridge between the IT capital of the world here in India with the technology capital of the world in Silicon Valley, and also we established a bridge between today and the future, which is the next 4th conference, there's only one thing left to me, to ask John Moroz to come and to say the last but not the least words of our conference.
I'll be very, very brief. Just to say that one of the things that's made this process work has been the fact that it's built on a continuation. It's not just a talking meeting. And I think so many of you here have heard a lot about what came from Dallas. Practical things that the breakthrough groups talked about have actually become policy recommendations, and 52% of those since Dallas have actually been implemented. And so we take very seriously. So part of the test of this now will be to take the New Delhi process, just as we've talked about London process and the Dallas, is to take the New Delhi process and make sure when we get to the Silicon Valley that we've done that. That will only happen if a lot of you are willing to work and give your time between now and the Silicon Valley Summit, whether you intend to be there or not, but you can make a difference. And so the big encouragement here is that you actually, as you threw yourself passionately into the breakthrough groups and the interest groups, that you also let us know if you want to volunteer, be part of these groups that move forward, or you have ideas of others who should, things we should know about, et cetera, so that we can keep advancing the process of building trust through actually seeking together solutions across borders, because that's what we're all about. May I just ask everyone to please make sure you fill this out. This is the concluding survey, and if you just leave it on the table, that's fine. Someone will pick it up. So if everyone has, is there anyone who doesn't have this who needs it? We'll be happy to get a copy to you before you leave. And finally, just on the thank you. By the way, it was a fantastic panel, summary panel. I think one of the best we've ever had. So congratulations and thank you to the panelists. And Latha Reddy, I have to tell you, now I'm going to hold you to your promise to be in Silicon Valley. You know, among those we thank, as we said, the Indian government has been fantastic. You saw the India committee under the minister, Kapil Sibal. The committee has worked hard and done a lot with us. But there are many Indian officials who I will say, I won't give any names, but there are many Indian officials who are not on that list officially, but who also work very, very hard to make this possible. And I think we can say this was as successful as the other summits, and it creates a high bar, and we'll continue to move forward. We also, of course, want to thank very much IEEE. You've been our long-term great partner, and without you, we wouldn't be where we are, and so we appreciate that. And of course, DSCI, NASCOM, and FICI, we appreciate what you did, the hard work to gather the people that's there. Our corporate partners, which have already been mentioned by Dr. Sarkisian, and of course our media partners, those of you in the poster sessions, those of you who took the time and the effort to prepare the papers, which were discussed by many others of you here. That was deeply, and also adds to the seriousness of the summit. I also want to thank the EWI staff. Carl and I want to thank all the EWI staff, Anneline and Franz and Allison and Jessel and all the Franz, all the team that have worked so hard here. I want to thank all of them because they've really been heroic. Haven't had much sleep. They will have hopefully tonight. And of course, our EWI directors, 10 of whom came from around the world to play key roles, and led by Kanwal Sibal and Anurag Jain. So thanks to everyone going forward. It's all about engagement and our taking this seriously. I'm happy to tell you we are now officially adjourned. The summit is finished. We now have a reception that you're welcome to. I believe it's on the lawn. Is that right, Annaline? Thank you. It's on the lawn right outside. You're welcome to do that and have a final, we'll call it the final networking break. Meanwhile, I think we all deserve a hand. And again, thank you, the participants.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll be in touch. I'm coming in December, and my son Barton will be in touch with you. He works in many places. It's a nice cyber system. I think your advice will help him a lot in India. Philip, thank you very much. Mike, that's been, yeah, see you in London. See you in London. You are now retired. Yeah, General. It's always easy to win, but